He's more than an athlete. He's an artist.
I think you're in love, Ron.
Shut up.
Victor, I love you. Victor, I do.
When we're apart, my heart beats only.
Harry Potter! Hey, my eyes aren't glistening with the ghost of my past.
I'm not an owl.
Technically, it's a fact.
Ah, c'est magnifique.
Kill the stag.
I'm on a Marty Crouch!
Behaving like a babbling, bumbling band of baboons.
Junior.
Hello. How's it going, everybody? Just wanted to hop in here real quick before the episode starts to let you know that next week we will be taking a brief break from our Goblet of Fire coverage. So I got good news, bad news. Bad news, no Goblet of Fire episode next week. Good news, you'll be getting 2 episodes next week. Yay! So 2 episodes, what do you mean, Barry? Last week, I was so excited about the HBO trailer that came out for the series, as well as the behind the scenes thing that came out. I messaged Brett's Thoughts, if you remember him. He was on an episode previously, and he and I recorded 2 episodes where we talked about the 10 things we would want the series to change from the Harry Potter canon, and the 10 things we would be upset if they changed. And so like the top 10 for each one. So both of those will come out next week, one on next Monday and one the following Wednesday or Thursday. Not sure, whichever I get it edited by. But just so you know, no Goblet of Fire coverage next week, but you get 2 new episodes. So there you go. Anyway, enjoy the episode. Bye. Hello, everybody. And thank you for listening to Retold, the podcast where I retell you my favorite stories of all time. Today, we will be talking about chapters 29 and 30 from the Goblet of Fire. But I never do this journey alone. I always have with me some very special guests. And with me this week, I have Rachel. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor to have you on. I'm so grateful. Listeners, if you remember, you've heard Rachel's name mentioned before. Previously, she asked me to go on to her podcast, The Menuscript, to be a guest host, and we talked about the whole Goblet of Fire book. But Rachel, before we continue at all, can I ask you just to share a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started because I love to read, and really no one that I knew was reading the same books that I was reading. So I was like, well, I'm just going to talk to myself and start a podcast. And it is about books and food because my other passion is cooking. And so every episode I break down a book and then share a meal or a snack that is in some way related. Sometimes it's very loosely related. And then sometimes it's just me yapping away. Other times I have other book podcasters like Barry here mentioned. He was an awesome guest for the whole Goblet of Fire episode. That was so much fun. I've also had some authors come on, or just other people in the book and book loving industry. So
you've also had, and some of my listeners would love to hear the episode, Mike Schubert from the Potterless podcast and Newest Olympian podcast. He was on that one on your show as well.
And Dr. Julian Womble he did Prisoner of Azkaban with me.
Very cool.
So I know he's been on your show.
We love the professor
as well,
on this podcast.
So, yes. Had some fun guests. And then I know you just did an episode with Laura. Laura's going to be coming into the kitchen for Order of the Phoenix in a couple weeks. So
very cool.
Bringing all the Potter friends together. So listeners, go, you can check it out. It's like Manuscript, but with an E instead of an A. And I'm on Instagram where I post lots of pictures of books and food. And then the podcasts are found wherever pods are cast and found. So
I like that. Wherever pods are cast. I need to, I think she checked it out, but I'll reshare this podcast your podcast with Corey, if you've ever heard her, also known as Wheezy the Red. She's a huge Harry Potter fan and a professional chef. So
oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That's what I'm saying. So Corey, check out that podcast. But she's a regular guest on my show, so I think she would love it. But anyway, thank you for sharing about your podcast. One thing I like to do with all of my first-time guests is I ask them this question of what is their fandom ID? And listeners, if you're new here, what that is I will ask my guest what their Hogwarts house is, what their favorite Harry Potter movie is, and their favorite Harry Potter book, and how they got into Harry Potter. So, Rachel, take it away.
I am a proud Ravenclaw. Every time I've done the quiz or anything, always been sorted into Ravenclaw house. So that is where you can find me. My favorite book always flips between Prisoner of Azkaban and Half-Blood Prince. For the longest time, it was solidly Prisoner of Azkaban. And then as I got older and started reread the series, I was like, oh my gosh, I love Half-Blood Prince. Like there's so much happening. This is amazing. Favorite movie. Oh my gosh. Probably as a whole movie, the first one, just because it was so new. And it's because of being the shortest book. The movie was able to stay so true to the book. I felt like, not as much had to get cut out. That said, there are like scenes and moments from some of the other films that are just so ingrained in my mind, like Filch nailing up all of the orders in Order of the Phoenix.
His ladder about to fall back or something.
Yes, yeah. And I love the Prince's Tale scene in Deathly Hallows. I think that was so spectacularly done. But as a whole film, the first one. And then how I got into Harry Potter, my dad actually read almost the entire series out loud to me as a kid growing up. That was like our bedtime.
Did he do voices?
Routine. He did not. I think every now and then he would try and then be like, never mind.
Yeah, I get that.
But he eventually did have to start like taking the book out of my bedroom with him, so I wouldn't sneak ahead. And most of the time, he didn't react, but there were definitely times where I don't want to give anything away for Goblet of Fire, but something happens towards the end of the book.
He's like, oh no.
And he was just like, he was dead. Wait, what? And so that was pretty funny. But then now in hindsight, I think I crushed him because the seventh one came out over the summer. And I was like, Dad, I need to read this book. One, because I wanted to know what was going to happen. And also, all the kids at school were going to be talking about it. The ending of the sixth one had already been ruined for me by nature of people talking about it. And he would only read, so much each night. So I was like, I can't have this ruined. And he was like, okay. But yeah, now I'm like, when I look back on it, I'm like, Dad, I'm so sorry.
Let's FaceTime. Let's go through it again. We can talk about it. You want a podcast, Dad? Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing all that. That's a very special thing to have your parent go through the series with you. It was kind of similar with me with the movies, but it was my mom who was super into it. And these were our sick day movies. Anytime I'd stay home from school, she would just throw these on. And for me, it was always the Goblet of Fire movie. We just play this on a loop. I love this movie so much. But without further ado, we will be moving on now to our Quizzitch section. And so, listeners, again, if you're new here, this is the part of the show where I have pridefully claimed that I know more about Harry Potter than anybody else in the entire world. And I put this theory to the test by challenging my guest hosts to a trivia competition. I represent myself. My guests represent the world. So, Rachel, you have a lot on your shoulders today.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
And so I will ask you 2 questions. You ask me 2 questions. And listeners, I keep track of the score. And at the end of each book, I call it a season. We count up who knew more about that book, me or the world. In book 1, I took the victory. Books 2 and 3, I lost, unfortunately. But here we are in book 4, and things are still tight. Currently, as it stands, I am down by 1 point. I don't know the overall score, but it's very close. I'm just losing by 1 singular point. So it's anybody's ball game at this point. But let's get it kicked off. Rachel, ask me your first question.
All right. So in chapter 29, Sirius writes Harry a letter and tells him to focus on 2 spells / skills. What does he tell Harry to focus on for the 3rd task?
Okay, I think I may just get a half point because I'm only sure about one of them. I believe it's hexes and jinxes. Is that what he says?
Okay, so I will think I do say you deserve half the point because he does say focus on hexes. Specifically, he calls out stunning and disarming.
Oh, stunning and disarming. Okay. Well, I'll take my half point then. Woo! It's been a big theme for this book. Half points have been flying everywhere.
You know what? I used to be a teacher. We live on partial credit.
That's right. That's right. Show your work and you'll get some credit.
Exactly.
All right. Your question is, what spell does Hermione suggest that Harry learn when they are practicing?
Let's see. I know they do the reducto. Oh, impedimenta.
That is correct. Ding, ding, ding. Good job, Rachel. Okay, okay. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. The other one would have been, so just for funsies, what spell was Harry practicing on Ron? Would you have gotten that right?
Well, that was he was stunning him, right?
He was stunning him. That's correct. Yeah. All right. What is your next question?
Okay. So in chapter 30, when we are down in the pensive, we see Moody, and something is different about him. What is different?
He has both eyes and his full nose.
Correct.
Yes. Fantastic. All right, then. In a similar vein, a Moody question. Moody is very upset that Karkaroff is probably going to be set free. And he says, it took me this many months to catch Karkaroff. How many months did it take Moody to catch Karkaroff?
Oh, man. World, I'm going to have to kind of go out on a limb here. I'm not as confident with this one as I was about the impedimenta. Was it 8?
That's very close. How about one more for half credit? One more guess for half credit.
7?
Very even closer. The answer is 6. But that's all right. You did not lose the lead. All right. So the world still has a half point lead over me, I believe.
All right.
Good job, world.
Take that.
Very good. Well, before we move on, listeners, we need to ask you your question for last week, give you your answer from last week and ask you this week's question. Unfortunately, I don't have written down what last week's question was. So Future Barry will hop back in here at this point and say what last week's question was. Hello, Future Barry here. Your question last week was, what type of socks did Harry get Dobby from Gladwag's I did it again. Gladwag's Wizard Wear. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. But anyway, that was your question. What type of socks did Harry get Dobby from Gladwag's Wizard Wear? And the answer to that was, well, you could have said 2 pair. One was a pair that had flashing gold and silver stars, and the other was a pair that screamed when it got too smelly. That was your answer to last week. And now, back to the podcast. And that was last week's answer. Hopefully you got that right. Congratulations if you did. If you didn't, better luck next time. Next time being right now. Your question for this week is, which Death Eater murdered the McKinnons? Which Death Eater murdered the McKinnons? If you want to answer that, you can write into theretoldpodcast@gmail.com or message me at theretoldpodcast on Instagram. Now, listeners, before we continue with the episode, I need to make an apology. I have been mispronouncing a name this whole time. One of my friends who's a regular guest on the show, Jonathan, I was having dinner with him the other night, and he goes, Barry, I've been catching up on the podcast. I have 2 things I want to say to you. And he gave me 2 pronunciation corrections. I forget what one of them was, but the other one, it was so blatant. I can't believe I've gotten it wrong every time. I've been saying Karkaroff without the R. It's Karkaroff. I will try my whole life. I've just said Karkaroff. I don't know why I never included the R. Maybe because I'm thinking a little bit of Dragon Ball Z and there's Kakarot. That's one of the characters' names. But my apologies, listeners. Karkaroff. If that annoyed you with my wonderful American accent, my apologies. But Quizzitch is out of the way. We will now be moving on to our retellings. And so this is the part of the episode, listeners, where I will recap, hopefully in a fun and entertaining manner, almost everything that happens in these 2 chapters. As I do so, Rachel is free to chime in as she sees fit. All right. She can let me ramble for as long as she wants, saying nothing, or she can interrupt me. If you hear her cutting me off, she is not being rude. She's doing what I asked her to do. All right. And then at the end of that, we have our bonus sections where we talk about our favorite lines, behind the scenes things, and book to movie changes. Do it all again for the next chapter. And at the very end of the episode, after we have definitely successfully avoided saying any spoilers whatsoever, we talk about those spoilers in the restricted section. So, Rachel, are you ready to kick things off?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So, chapter 29, The Dream. The trio discuss who attacked Crumb. My note was, silly Harry. He thinks Crouch disapparated. And why is that silly, listeners? Because he can't disapparate on Hogwarts grounds. He would have known that if he read Hogwarts. No, is it Hogwarts of History or...
It is Hogwarts of History. He'd also know it if he just listened to Hermione.
He just listened to
does
Hermione.
it like once a book.
That's right. I love anytime she brings it up. There was one time recently in this book where she goes, are you guys ever going to read this book? He goes, Ron says, no. Anyway, what were you going to say? Like, Ron's always quick to fire back with.
Yeah, or he's like, well, why would I? You know it by heart.
Yeah. So Hermione shuts down all of their theories about how Barty Crouch could have disappeared. Eventually, they send a letter to Sirius telling him everything that has happened up in the Owlry. And when Harry says Crouch said Voldemort was getting stronger, I like this moment a lot. Ron tries to dismiss this as Crouch just getting mad. And Harry goes, unfortunately, that's when he seemed the most sane, was whenever he was talking about Voldemort increasing in power. So I don't know if that checks out, Ron. Ron's like, oh, bummer. But
Ron's trying so hard.
Come on, anything? We get some more Snape blaming because when in doubt, blame Snape. And just then, 2 people come walking up to the Owlry. They're talking about...
This is one of the rare times Harry actually is right to blame Snape because Snape did hold them up. Not out of malice, not for the reasons Harry's thinking, Snape wasn't in on it, but he would have gotten to Dumbledore faster had Snape not been there.
That's a very fair point. It's like, you weren't evil, but you were a jerk. And that was enough to throw things off. So they engage in more Snape blaming. Just then, 2 people come into the Owlry talking something about blackmailing. And who is it? It's Fred and George. I like the moment. There's 3 instances of them saying the same words at the same time. First it's Ron and Fred, like, what are you doing here? Then Harry and George, no, what are you doing here? And then Hermione and Fred.
Sending a letter.
Yeah, but they're being a little shifty. I like Ron in this moment standing up for himself, which doesn't happen often with them 2 because they accuse him of being nosy. And he goes, hey, if you're thinking about blackmailing people, that is my business too. All right. Don't besmirch the family name. Don't drag us all into this. Mom and Dad can't afford bail. All right.
Really. Before we continue, since this is kind of retelling, I had a little hypothetical here.
Yeah.
This conversation plays out the way it does, largely because the 2 people who come in are not only other Gryffindors, but Ron's brothers. What if it was 2 random Hufflepuffs? Actually, take that back. Hufflepuffs would never be accused of blackmail.
That's right.
2 random Ravenclaws coming in, and they hear them talking about blackmail, but they don't know these people. Would it just be because everyone knows Harry?
Yeah, I think Hermione's suspicions would be a lot more justified in this moment. Of were they up to something? So yeah, if that's the case, then we'd be like, wow, another red herring this late into the book? That's crazy.
Good point.
Yeah. It gives me vibes of, and I won't spoil too much, but the little girls that stand watch for Draco in book 6, who are these 2 random girls? But anyway, so they send their letter and they roll out. Hermione wonders if they know something about Crouch. Later that day, after a very boring history of magic class, they go to see Moody. And he's looking a little sleepy. He's tired from the previous night's events. They're like, did you get Crouch at all? And he's like, no trace of him. So they go into his office, and I really enjoy because he says to Hermione, "You might consider being an Auror too," and it's just one of the funniest moments when Ron keeps trying to come up with theories and potentials of what could have happened to Crouch, and the narrator says like he kept looking at Moody, wishing that Moody might say maybe he should be an Auror too. He's like, "I could do it, right? I could do it, right?" Poor Ron. Moody tells Harry to focus on the task, though, forget about Crouch, and for Hermione and Ron to stick close to Harry. Constant vigilance, Rachel. Constant vigilance.
Constant.
Have you listened to the new audiobooks for these?
I have listened to the first two. Working my way through the series. Some other books I'm trying to listen to as well. My uncle just started the Court of Thorns and Roses series, so I've been listening to those to like keep up with him, which
That's
has been
cool.
super fun. But once I'm done with that, I'm gonna circle back for the next Harry Potters. I'm very excited because they've been great so far.
And it's a star-studded cast, like especially with a lot of these
Every time I
adults.
see names come up, I'm just like, wow.
Keira Knightley is Umbridge. What?
Okay, I was hoping that that's who it was because I did see her name with book 5.
Yeah.
But I didn't say like who she was. I was like, it's gotta be Umbridge because like that's really the only new like female character. I was like, unless it's Tonks, but I can't see her as Tonks.
But the person who plays Moody is freaking James McAvoy.
Amazing.
Mr. Tumnus, for anybody who doesn't know who I'm referring to. But I was like, it's so interesting. Like some of these people you might not even know. I know Gilderoy Lockhart is voiced by Jon Snow, Kit Harington. Anyway, it's the next morning and they get some letters. One is for Hermione. Actually, Hermione gets the newspaper and it confirms that Rita doesn't know crap about Crouch. So that's nice. And the other is from Sirius. And Sirius is not happy that Harry went for a little nighttime stroll with Victor Crumb. And it starts off bad because I think, is he pulling a racism here? But I think he's just looking out for Harry because it kind of just turns into a Godfather saying, not blaming Crumb, but blaming Harry for walking close to the woods that late. So I was like, you know what? He's just being a good Godfather. I'll take it.
Yeah, I really think that like unless it was Harry or Ron, Hermione, maybe Hagrid, Sirius would kind of
get upset about anybody.
Would be right because he doesn't say you are not to go walking with anyone, from Durmstrang. He specifically says anyone else. Like I think he, rightfully so is like he's not wrong. There is someone very dangerous at the school, and again, like you were probably pretty close.
Yeah, it was a foolish thing to do, admittedly.
And I think had Harry in his letter not said the person he was with, I think Sirius's response would have been exactly the same. Like, why were you walking with somebody?
Absolutely. Like we've been talking about somebody's out to get you and you don't know who. You know what that means? It means everybody's a suspect, Harry. Come on. As they continue talking, Harry makes a good argument to Hermione. Why did I write that? He said if somebody like wanted to hurt me then, they could have done it very easily. Like Crumb was right there and Crouch was right there. He's still wrong, but I think he does somewhat hold his own intellectually in that moment. But we keep moving. Harry is forced to stay inside. I love that line where it's like Harry, the Hogwarts grounds never looked more appealing to Harry than when he wasn't allowed to go outside, like as he was stuck in. But he's studying and practicing hexes. He's using Ron and Hermione as practice dummies. Like that moment where Ron's like, do we really need to keep doing this? How about we try something else? Hermione says, it's not that big of a deal. You just need to fall on the cushions. He goes, well, you can't really direct where you fall once you've been stunned. And I really like when he goes, all right, Hermione, how about you give it a try? And she goes, I think Harry's got it now. I think he's good to go. So we don't need to do that anymore. And then before they leave, she goes, I think Harry should start practicing the what curse, Rachel?
The impediment curse to slow
That's correct.
you down.
Yeah, somebody knew that in Quizzitch. Ding, ding, ding. So the bell rings and it's time for some divination. And Ron says it's going to be hot in there. And he's right. It's so hot that Harry cracks open a little window. All right. And he feels a nice little breeze. And oh no, it would be such a shame if somebody turned out all the lights in there and made it nice and cozy, put a little fire, made it a perfect sleepy time environment. Well, that's exactly what happens. And off to Betty Byland Harry goes. He soars on the back of an eagle owl. And in my head, I was like, Malfoy's owl. But, because that's the only time we hear mention of an eagle owl. But he soars on the back of
Lord of the Rings. The eagles are coming.
Oh, no, not that kind. So he soars on an eagle owl to some shabby looking place. And in that house is Nagini, Wormtail, and Voldemort. Good news from Wormtail. All right. He's not going to be snake food anymore. Yay. Bad news for Nagini. She doesn't get to eat him. Sad. Maybe she'll get to eat Harry later, though. That's what Voldemort says. And Voldemort tortures Wormtail a little more. And as he's torturing Wormtail with the Cruciatus curse, Wormtail's screaming and Harry's screaming too. But he's not just screaming in the dream. He's screaming in real life. And Ron wakes him up and he's on the floor of the divination classroom. And everybody's like, bro, you good? And it's so funny to me, Trelawney saying like, of course he's not good. All right, Harry, come over here. We have a chance to go further with the inner eye than we've ever had. All right, you're almost into the beyond. You know, we could really make something happen here. Harry's like, the only thing I want to see is a like cure-all potion or whatever it was he mentions. So get me out of there. But he leaves the classroom. But Rachel, he doesn't go to the hospital wing. All right. Instead, he heads straight to Dumbledore's office. My next note is cockroach cluster. Really? Because that should have been one of our trivia. I'm surprised neither one of us asked each other that question.
So I wasn't sure how many trivia questions we needed. I did have a password related trivia question. But then asked about the Moody one instead.
You know what I noticed was I'm listening to the audiobook too, the new one, which is very difficult for me to do because I'm so loyal to Jim Dale.
Yes.
That it's like, I don't know how. I do it mainly for like memory, because if I listen to the Jim Dale one, which is what I've always listened to, it helps me remember that. So it's a new experience, less likely to remember that. But anyway, one thing I noticed is that at that part when Harry first walks up, I forget which one he says in the book, but he says, maybe sherbet drop or lemon drop.
Sherbet lemon.
He says sherbet lemon in the book. Well, in the audiobook, he says lemon drop. And I think that's the British version. And so I was a little surprised by that.
Oh, yeah.
But they make that change for like British they don't change it in that regard from British to American texts, but they do change the Sorcerer's Stone bit, because earlier when Moody is talking to them in his office, he says, you've been through challenges before, Harry, and obstacle courses, like you went to get the Sorcerer's Stone. He doesn't say Philosopher's Stone. So they like make that change for the American audience, like versions. I wonder like how many audible versions there are of this. Like, did they do multiple takes and sell them differently? And I don't know. If not, they ticked off everybody by making it Sorcerer's Stone all the way throughout. Anyway, Harry does his best Samwise. I figured you would like that. He drops some eaves. Some eaves on this conversation.
Before that we get into this conversation, though, like it's been mentioned on I know MuggleCast brings it up quite a bit, and I think you've mentioned it in some of your episodes too. Just how many security issues there are at Hogwarts. And here's another one, because Harry is just guessing candy at will here. There's no like time or lockout feature on the gargoyle. Like he can just keep going.
Yeah, come back in 30 minutes. Something
right. Like you'd think after like 3 or 4 wrong guesses, it's like, nope, you're not getting in here. Nope.
Yeah, I was going to say the potential protection was, hey, maybe people don't know that it's a candy. However,
true, you have
Harry
to know
already,
to start with a candy.
Yeah, but Harry already knew it was a candy. All it takes is one student to know that it's a candy, and then they can tell everybody else, because they probably would. So that is funny. Yeah, he just keeps rambling. I think there should have been a timeout charm, because I think those like gargoyles are a bit sentient, because later in a different book they kind of speak a little more, but I won't say more about that. Anyway, So yeah, he shouldn't have made it in, but he does. And again, I like that Harry like cockroach clusters. Really, that's the one that does it. But he's dropping some eaves on Moody, Fudge, and Dumbledore. They discuss all the happenings. Fudge does a bit of a racism, and Dumbledore shoots him down. It's one of my favorite lines, so I'll save it for that section. But Moody says, "Hey, we got an eavesdropper out there. Let's wrap this up." And that's the end of the chapter. Yay!
Woohoo!
All right. So now, listeners, we'll be moving on to our favorite lines. So this is the part of the episode where we just highlight some of our favorite moments throughout the chapter. I really love a good one-liner. I love a funny line. I love a clever line. I love a line that makes me feel. And that's what this section is for. So I'll get started, and then Rachel, we can bounce back and forth with some of the different ones that we have.
Sure.
So my first one, I have it right here, is Fred and George. Oh, yeah. Fred and George looked at each other. Then Fred said abruptly, "I've told you before, Ron, keep your nose out of it if you like the shape that it is." And I just thought that was a funny or a funny threat. So what's one you got?
So mine is during the dream when we hear Nagini, said the cold voice, "You are out of luck. I will not be feeding Wormtail to you after all." And I don't know why. It's just like I don't associate Voldemort with like having humor. But that line of just like you look at your pet, because I know like I've seen my mom do this with our family dog.
Yeah.
Like if the whole plate is clean or she knows whatever the scrap is something that will not sit well with his digestive system. She's like, "Out of luck, bud." And so that's
Not
just what I'm
today.
picturing here. Like you just look at your pet, like, "Sorry, nothing for you."
Yeah, or like when you're cooking and nothing falls on the floor. "Sorry, buddy, not this time."
Yeah.
One of mine, it's on their way to divination. This is not a funny line or even a clever line. I just thought it was a really cool description. "See you at dinner," said Hermione, and she set off for arithmancy while Harry and Ron headed toward North Tower in divination. Broad strips of dazzling gold sunlight fell across the corridor from the high windows. The sky outside was so brightly blue, it looked as though it had been enameled. That's just beautiful. I just like put that up on my
It is
my
really
YouTube
nice
working
writing.
playlist and have that be the background. So yeah, I like that a lot. What's another one you got?
Yeah, so from this chapter, it's towards the end, when Dumbledore very calmly says, "I think it possible that it is you who are prejudiced, Cornelius." And I just love one that this is where like we start to see Dumbledore and Fudge are not always on the same page. We saw it a bit in Prisoner of Azkaban too, with the having Dementors at the school or not, but also just that like very rarely do people call one another out, and Dumbledore can usually count on him to call someone out.
Yeah, a
And
bit
I
unafraid.
appreciated that.
And so to follow up with yours, I love this so much. When he's asked about the possibility of Maxime being the person who attacked Crumb, Fudge asks him, "Dumbledore, do you know what that woman is?" And he says, "I consider her to be a very able headmistress and an excellent dancer." Oh, I loved that. Love that but it also said Dumbledore quietly, as if like, don't go down this path, Fudge. All right, you don't want to do this with me. But yeah, so those are all my favorite lines. Did you have any more, or were you out too?
Not from that chapter.
Very good. So now moving on, listeners, to our Transfiguration section. And these are differences that the movies made from the books. So the first one, I think, really just to clarify, there's not a whole lot for this chapter. For the most part, this one is a giant omission. Harry does not go to divination class in this movie. At least we don't see him going to divination class in the movie. Any of the dreams that he has, it's not in a classroom. It's in his own bed in Gryffindor Tower. So I guess that's kind of a change. But he has that dream. The dream that he has of Voldemort and Wormtail, it usually includes Barty Crouch as well. It's the same dream happening over and over again. And it happens the night of the Yule Ball rather than here. And also being a different dream here. But the other big change is that when Harry goes up to listen, he's not trying to listen to him, but when he goes to talk to Dumbledore in his office, we don't get that fun lemon drop scene. However, a change that does take place, not just an omission, but an actual change, is when they're in the office, Fudge is like refusing to cancel the Triwizard Tournament. That's what the conversation is. They're not trying to blame anybody for who attacked Barty Crouch like they are in the book. But in this instance, Dumbledore is saying, hey, somebody's died. We should probably cancel this. And Fudge's response is, I will not be seen as a coward. And that's when Moody goes, guys, this conversation is no longer private. And then he uses his wand, flicks open the door. But that's what happens in the movie instead of them talking about who attacked Crouch. And that's really all I have for Transfigurations for this chapter. We'll have a bit more for the next one, but that's it there. So moving on now, listeners, to our Golden Snitch section. And so this is the part of the episode where we talk about behind the scenes things, if a spell is mentioned for the first time or a wizard is mentioned on a like chocolate frog card, and we'll dig a little more into that. But the first one I have mentioned, I can't remember if it's the first time this is mentioned. I feel like it's crazy if it is, but I have the stunning spell. Also known as the Stupefy charm, or Stunner for short, was a charm that stunned the target, rendering them unconscious. This charm was exceptionally useful in dueling, as it can quickly end a duel without causing lasting damage. The spell also had the ability to halt moving objects. The counter charm to the stunning spell was the reviving spell. It could also be defended against the shield charm. And the hand movement, I always do the hand movement, even though it's an audio podcast, but it's straight down, listeners. It's just, you go flick down. That's what you do if you want to do the Stupefy spell. Stupefy comes from the Latin word stupere, meaning to be stunned. Stupefy is also an English word, which means to stun or amaze. Some of the behind the scenes, though, the stunning spell has been identified as a jet or flash or burst of red, blue, white, or green light in the film adaptations. In the books, it's described as a jet of red light alone, though. So I guess that's a bit of a change. But yeah, so let's move on to the next one. We also have the impediment jinx, which is interesting that on the wiki, it's known as a jinx when Hermione calls it a curse. But the impediment jinx was a jinx that hindered the movement of the target, slowing it down or stopping it in its tracks. It was a common spell used in dueling, and since it only caused minimal damage, it was commonly taught in schools, including the Hogwarts Dueling Club. The hand movement for this one is straight across. So the other one being vertical, this one's horizontal. That's the hand movement for this one. The incantation impedimenta is derived from the Latin word impedimentum, meaning a hindrance. The spell also shares similarity with the knockbacks jinx, windy spell, stunning spell, banishing charm, and disarming charm in its alternative ability to shove, knock down, or send a target flying. In the U.S. edition of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, this spell is incorrectly called the impediment curse. Well, that explains it. Instead of the impediment jinx in the UK version. However, the spell is correctly called the impediment jinx in the US version of the Order of the Phoenix. So that was fun. And then there's a bunch of Hogwarts mystery lore about it. But then the very last one I had, an orrery. Have you ever heard of this term, Rachel? An orrery? I had not. So an orrery was a model of the sun, planets, and moons of the solar system used for studying astronomy. But Trelawney was using it in her divination class.
Ah, yeah, her little model.
Yeah, and so really, I thought this was going to be a fun Golden Snitch, listeners. That's really all it says about it on this page. So that's about it for the Golden Snitch for this section. Moving on now, I'm ready for the next chapter. Rachel, do you need to take a break?
No, I'm good.
Fantastic. Well, let's get rocking with Chapter 30, The Pensieve. Yay. All right, Chapter 30. Harry walks in and says, it wasn't Madame Maxime, Minister, so quit your stereotyping. She'd have I love where he says, she'd have a job of hiding, though, wouldn't she? Like, she's really big. I didn't see her at all. I don't think she could have hid behind a tree. It makes me think of in the Pirates of the Caribbean and Dead Man's Chest, if you've seen that one, when Jack Sparrow is walking with like the lamp hiding from Norrington at Tortuga. He's like, that's not a good hiding spot at all. Or the plant. But Dumbledore smiles behind Fudge's back. Love that, where he's like, way to call him out, Harry. But Harry tells Dumbledore that he'd like to talk to him, but they have to But Dumbledore has to go inspect the grounds first, so Harry has to sit in the office and wait. He looks around, sees Fawkes, the Sorting Hat, the Sword of Gryffindor, a bunch of stuff that he's like, maybe I shouldn't mess with that. But then he sees a really cool silver light. Ooh. I love that before he goes to examine it, it says he looks at Fawkes first. Like, are you cool with this? Let's do this.
Yeah. It's like, are you going to tell?
There was this interesting moment where it says he wanted to touch the liquid in the thing, but the text says, but 4 years in the wizarding world had taught him better than to touch like random like liquid objects that he didn't know what they were. And I thought, I feel like it's wizarding world or not, you should just know, like, you didn't need to say 4 years in the wizarding world. The muggle world kind of teaches you that too.
Right. But then like, I also called that out for a different reason of like, oh, he doesn't want to touch it like with his hand, but he'll put his whole face in it.
Yeah. How close can I get? Yeah, he gives a little snoot boop, but like instead of using his finger to boop a snoot, he uses his nose. And it's funny because that's really the next thing that happens, because he goes, I really shouldn't touch it. And then a few sentences later, he would lean too closely and his nose touched the surface of the water. Really cool description of it, though, where it's talking about when he can't decide whether it's like liquid made solid or gas made liquid or whatever. Very good writing there. But Harry puts his face close. He touches it. And bam, he gets drawn into a courtroom drama. There's a whole room down there full of people with all their chairs pointed at another chair in the middle. But that chair doesn't look so fun. It has some chains on it. Also, Harry's sitting next to Dumbledore. He learns that he is in a memory. I love his like deducing of that. He's like, hold on. I've been in something like this before. There's also a really funny moment that we'll talk about in a restricted section where he's like, this has to be a memory because Dumbledore wouldn't ignore me like this. Eventually, two Dementors bring in Igor Karkaroff, listeners, Karkaroff, to stand/sit trial. Moody isn't happy about that, though, because he's like, took me ever to find him. How long did it take him, Rachel?
6 months.
6 months. Redemption. He says, it would be better if we just got what we wanted out of him and throw him back to the Dementors. And I always laughed at Dumbledore like huffing a noise of dissent out of his nose, like, Moody says, I forgot, you don't really like the Dementors. And Dumbledore says, no, I really don't think the Ministry should be partnering with them. And that's interesting. Anyway,
yeah.
Karkaroff goes on his little tattletale tour, calling out everybody he used to be buddies with. I like Moody's running commentary of this, where every time he says something, Moody's like just insulting what he says or calling him out for it. I also like when Karkaroff gets like, when he would say a name and they tell him either the person's been caught or they're dead, his fake responses to it of like, I am delighted to hear it, or no more than he deserved, very just keep going. Yeah, I hated
like
that
he's
guy.
panicking because he's not giving them anything useful.
I'm panicking. Karkaroff says a few more names. The only good one is Rookwood, who works in the Department of Mysteries. We do learn that Snape was once a Death Eater, though, and I think that's the first time that's ever mentioned. So that's pretty valuable information. And Dumbledore, I like Dumbledore gets up, says, "Yeah, he was, but he's chill now. We don't need to worry about it." And it says Harry looks at Moody behind Dumbledore's back, and Moody's like, I don't think so. Doesn't sit well with me. The courtroom disappears, though. We move on to the next scene, and then it reappears, and Harry is in a different seat. Still next to good old Dumbledore, though. And he notices that the vibes of the room are a lot more chill this time. All right, so you see a young Rita in the room with her acid green quill and her magenta robes. I make note of stuff like that because I'm always scared my guests are going to ask me, what color were the robes?
Has anyone?
Yes. And it was very upsetting because I didn't get it right that time. But I've learned from my mistake, listeners. Anyway, who's on trial? It's Ludo. He played for the Wimborne Wasps. His celebrity status and his boyish charm really saves him this time because he was kind of making deals, not deals. He was sharing information with Rookwood, even though he claims, I didn't know he was a Death Eater. I thought we were actually getting information for our side. I like that moment at the beginning when he says, Crouch says, do you have anything to say for yourself? And he goes, only that I've been a real idiot. And everybody's like, oh, so charming.
I know. That makes me so mad. So like Professor Womble talks a lot about like pretty privilege on his podcast. And here we're not necessarily getting pretty privilege because, I mean, he's described as being very fit and
several different types of privilege going in at once.
But yes, like he's a famous athlete. He's, you know, maybe from a well-to-do or notable background. Like people know who he is, and like he's known for being this like affable, fun guy, and you know, maybe does lean a little bit on the jock kind of airhead stereotype of like, well, yeah, I was a bit of an idiot. Like I didn't know I was passing secret information. And yeah, this may have gone very differently if he were not a famous Quidditch player. I mean, even someone else from the jury, which also there's a problem with the jury.
That's a crazy moment.
Is like, I just want to congratulate him on his splendid performance for England in the Quidditch match against Turkey last Saturday. My got steadily more accented there. You can feel free to cut that.
I liked it.
I don't want to offend any English listeners. And yet right now everyone's like cheering. What the heck? Like I don't like Mr. Crouch, like don't get me wrong. But I also completely understand why he's furious in this moment.
Yeah, I think reading this back and thinking about it, it's like, do I think Ludo in this regard was evil? No, but obviously you still did something wrong. You know, just because there was no evil intent doesn't mean you did an okay thing. You know, you're still exchanging like government secrets, it seems like. So do I think Azkaban should have been his sentence? Probably not, but you know, maybe a fine. I'm taking he's probably rich, you know, something like that. But because he's so charming and, you know, you got the trifecta, rich, famous, and handsome. So he's got all that going for him. And he basically gets off because like everybody just claps whenever she says that about like, we loved his performance against Turkey. So even though she was the only one that stood up and said something, everybody's like, we agree. He's just wonderful. He also makes that funny note of like, well, I can't keep getting hit in the head with bludgers my whole life, can I? And they're like, oh, he's so right and funny. But he gets off scot-free basically. So we transition again. It's a new memory, same chamber, very different vibe though. This time around in this particular trial, everybody's on edge. Everybody's super angry. 4 wizards come into the room, one of whom is Bartemius Crouch's son. Dun, dun, dun. And so one thing my listeners hear me say this all the time, making reference to the Jimdale narration. But at this point, I don't know what the voice actor for Barty Crouch's son did in the new version because I like stopped listening here and it was just quicker to take hand notes. But I know in the Jimdale version, the screaming and the pain in Barty Crouch's son's voice, it's some of the best voice acting I've ever heard. It's so good and like it twists your heart. Like it hurts so bad. It feels crazy stuff. Good job, Jim. But in this trial, Barty is just furious. His wife's next to him crying the whole time. And the 4 Death Eaters stand accused of torturing Frank and Alice Longbottom to get information out of them about Voldemort and his current whereabouts after he's fallen. And they are found super guilty. It kind of implies that it was a unanimous decision, that everybody voted that they should be imprisoned.
To call this a trial is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is not, there is
no evidence is heard.
chance.
It's just voting.
They were guilty, but, or so we think.
They're guilty.
I mean, the whole thing is coming in and like Crouch says, you've been brought before the Council of Magical Law so that we may pass judgment on you. Like it was a sentencing. So I don't know if the trial already happened, because he even does say, like, we've heard the evidence against you.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, they never get a chance to give any kind of defense or alibi or anything. The son is just saying, I didn't do it.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, Dumbledore even explains later, like when Harry asks, was he guilty?
oh
And
yeah, he says, I don't know.
Don't know. I mean, Sirius didn't even get a trial. We know that. He made mention of that earlier. Crouch was
Right.
quick to
Crouch
imprison him.
is known for
Mm-hmm.
not giving trials.
Yep. So the thing I was going to call out was like their voting system.
Oh yeah.
It's just raising hands. And in my head, I don't know, it should be a little more official than that. It's almost as bad. The only way it could be worse would be like, when you go to a concert or something and they're like, clap if you think it's this one, or clap if you think it's that one, and whichever's the louder clap or the louder cheer is the right answer. In my head, that's how the ministry decides their decisions. Which side of the audience is louder? But they are found super guilty. They're sentenced to Azkaban, a lifetime sentence, and it ends with, you're my father, I'm your son. And Barty Crouch saying, you are no son of mine.
Mhm.
His wife passes out. Harry says he didn't even notice his wife passing out. At that moment, though, Dumbledore, the present Dumbledore, reappears and tells Harry that they should probably go. All right, it's time to get on out of here. So they leave the memory world, and Dumbledore explains to Harry what a pensieve is. Like, I don't know, how would you describe it, Rachel? Just this thing you can see memories in?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it stores your memories. I mean, I still have lots of questions on like how it works. Like once you put your memory in the pensieve, is it not in your head anymore? Or is it like, it's like saving a document on your computer. Like you still know what's in that document loosely, but like if you forget all the details, like you have the document to refer to.
Yeah, it was funny. I was about to like, in that same vein, write my official like opinion on that. But then I remembered, in order to do that, I need to do restricted section stuff. And I'm also not sure. So we'll save that for the restricted section. Hopefully I don't forget, because I don't think I wrote down pensieve in the restricted section, but we'll get there. So yeah, it's just this thing that you store your memories in. The way Dumbledore says it is like, I'm able to, like what you said, copy and paste, go around and look at it, see what's going on, like relive some things when his brain gets too clustered. So when he shows Harry the Snape memory, he says, I love that. Snape appears in the pensieve and says like, yeah, Karkaroff's is reappearing too, and it's just as like bright as mine is. And we know what they're talking about, listeners, but he says just as bright as mine is. And I love Dumbledore's response is, yeah, I didn't need help to figure that out. I didn't really need you to tell me that connection. He's just being kind of sassy. We get the Bertha moment of like a young Bertha Jorkins appears in the pensieve, and she's talking about how she was hexed or cursed by somebody for, I think, like gossiping or something like that. But I do really like in that moment, Dumbledore says you still didn't need to follow him. And it says his face is over the pensieve and the glowing light is reflecting on his face. And Harry says he looked older than he had ever seen him. And what I liked about that is, in my head, it just kind of shows the care that Dumbledore has for his students. I know it doesn't always isn't always executed properly, but there are these certain moments where like you can tell he's heartbroken about what happened to Bertha, and he is like aging himself and is stressing himself out trying to figure out what happened. So I don't know, I thought that was a cool moment. He has pain and he feels for his students. But anyway, Harry tells Dumbledore that he fell asleep in divination. Dumbledore says, understandable, continue.
I love that.
Harry tells him about the dream that he had, and Dumbledore like ponders what it could possibly mean. Dumbledore tells Harry why he thinks his scar hurts. And his theory is that I think your scar hurts anytime anytime Voldemort, feels joy. Is that what he says?
Well, he says hatred, but
hatred.
I think it is like any strong emotion. So yeah, like if he's feeling particularly joyful or
Or if he's nearby.
like triumphant, right? Or if he's just nearby.
Yeah. So Harry asks if he thinks Voldemort is getting stronger, and Dumbledore mentions, like, during the last Wizarding War, people were disappearing, and this time we have a few different disappearances. Heck, there was even one in the Muggle newspaper that the Ministry doesn't even care about. Good old Gardner Frank Bryce.
That was another thing I was going to call out when he says, like, the third was a disappearance because it was a Muggle, Frank Bryce, who, we meet in, like, the very first chapter of this book. And, like, what the heck? Like, justice for Frank.
Yeah.
Like, they don't... Which, I mean, to
justice
be fair,
for Frank.
there are far too many Muggles probably randomly disappearing for the Ministry to take an interest in all of them. Like, I've watched enough crime TV shows to know that people disappear.
Fair enough. But the location of this one is important.
Exactly. Like, the location and the manner of it, like, you know that this town has a history with a dark
some
wizard.
shenanigans going on there.
Like, stuff has happened here before. But I mean, I think it does, again, just speak to that the Ministry doesn't really care about Muggles. I mean, look at how they treated that family at the World Cup from earlier in this book. Like, just
obliviates them and their
modifying
memories.
their memories at will. And so I'm going to stand by my justice for Frank statement.
Justice for Muggles. All right.
And Muggles as a whole. Yeah.
The next thing we learn about in this chapter is, Neville's parents, because Harry asks him, hey, is that Neville's parents that they were talking about? And I love the next line is Dumbledore fixed him with a sharp look, of like, again, Dumbledore's care for his students of this is not something to mess with. This is not something to mention. This is not something to gossip about. If Neville hasn't told you this, don't share it with others. And that's like the note the chapter ends on. And there's even a note of bitterness in his voice as he's talking about it, saying the Longbottoms were very popular. Everybody loved them. And that was a big reason why this trial turned out the way that it did, of everybody hating them so much. And I think we say things like this in the Muggle world too, of when certain tragedies happen to like beloved figures in the media, people get just angry very quickly. I don't want to speak too more on that because it's a bit of a bummer, but it's an understandable feeling that takes place.
Yeah. On a slightly more uplifting note related to this, if this can be uplifting, this is a big growth moment for Harry, because it says, Harry shook his head, wondering, as he did, like, how he could have never asked Neville this. And he's realizing, like, I've lived with this boy for 4 years and I've never asked or talked about,
why he got brought up with his grandma.
With his grandmother. And it is, like, it's a private thing, so I can see why it wouldn't, but I think it also speaks to, Harry and Ron are very close, but he lives with 3 other boys in that dorm and, doesn't really seem to know them very well. And unfortunately, we don't see him make too much of an effort to get to know them better. But he's got a lot on his mind. So,
yeah, I think so. I like how you introduced that, saying like it's a growth moment for Harry, because, he does admit that he feels regret over not asking. But one of the things I really appreciate about that is sometimes I'll hear people harp on Harry, especially in these earlier books, for some of his attitude towards his friends. And I just think these are the years where you start to learn about, emotional maturity and awareness. All right. So it's okay that he hasn't done it to this point. But let's see what it looks like moving forward. Now, unfortunately, again, you brought up, he doesn't take too much time to get to know Dean and Seamus, at least not on page. But still. Anyway, so he asks about Bagman as well, and Dumbledore's like, yeah, he hasn't really gotten up to much shenanigans that we know about, at least Death Eater stuff. And then he asks about Snape as well. And I like the moment where it said the Pensieves seem to be asking the question for him, so he doesn't even have to say the name Snape. Like, Snape just appears, and Dumbledore's like, no, he's good too. And Harry tries to ask, like, what did Snape do that made you think he wasn't a Death Eater anymore? And Dumbledore just says, I'm not telling you that. And I like the writing there where it says, he wasn't angry. Harry didn't hear any anger in his voice, but he could definitely tell that the interview was over. Oftentimes Dumbledore has this note of finality to some of his words and things that he says. But the chapter ends with Harry leaving the office and Dumbledore telling him, hey, don't tell people about Neville's parents. And also, good luck with the third task, Harry. And that's the end of the chapter. Yay! So moving on now, listeners, once again to our favorite lines of this chapter. And I got just a few, so I'll get us kicked off and we'll bounce back and forth again. But the first one I have was, so this is Harry, when Harry asks Dumbledore what the pensieve is. It is called a pensieve, said Dumbledore. I sometimes find, I am sure you know the feeling that I simply have too many thoughts and memories crammed into my mind. Said Harry, who couldn't truthfully said that he had ever felt anything of the sort. Oh, I love that. He was like, yeah, for sure, definitely. What's one you got?
So this is kind of similar to the one that you called out in the previous chapter, in that it's just beautiful writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when he's describing the pensieve, and he goes,
Oh,
it was
good,
a
I'm
bright
glad.
whitish silver, and it was moving ceaselessly. The surface of it became ruffled like water beneath wind, and then like clouds separated and swirled smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
That's just gorgeous.
Amazing. Love that. Very beautiful. I'm glad you mentioned that one. Another one I had was this Dumbledore line when he pulls Harry out of the pensieve. Dumbledore shook his head. Curiosity is not a sin, he said, but we should exercise caution with our curiosity. Yes, indeed. I love that, where it's like, it's not bad to ask questions, Harry. You can ask questions, but be careful how you go about asking and who you go seeking answers from, I guess, is the warning that's there. And that's good advice. That's good advice.
Yeah. So I actually had that line pulled too.
Mm-hmm.
And not to dive too much into religion, but I am Catholic, and I know whenever I'm preparing to go to confession, which at the time of recording this, it is Lent, so I got to get that done before Easter. I really think, I don't know, as I've gotten older, it's like, what is sin? Like, what do I want to go and talk about when I go? As a kid, it was like I snuck an extra cookie. Or I told my parents, like, yeah, I totally finished my homework. Wasn't done yet. Always got it done, listeners. But
always got it done. That's important to
not
know.
always when I told my parents that I did. But this I just loved, of like, curiosity is not a sin. It's not bad to want to know about the world, to ask questions, like you said. So I had pulled that line as well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because my listeners know I'm a youth pastor, talk about this stuff every once in a while, but I even just did I have a series right now that I teach to my students this semester called Scrutinized is what I'm doing, but I've asked them to bring me every Wednesday night their major questions and problems with Christianity. And we sort of talk about it and like go through the potential answers to some of these things. But the very first lesson I had for them was, is it a sin to question God and to ask questions about what you believe? Because does that show a lack of faith? And one of the cool things that we got to understand is the Bible asks like more sophisticated and more like intense questions about God than we typically do. When you read the Psalms and several different books of these people in the Old and New Testament, both being like, where are you, God? Why do you allow bad to happen? Why are you okay? Just moving through all these different, why do you put me in this situation? And so like one of the things we made note of is, no, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be curious. Obviously don't be disrespectful, but it's more so like seeking an answer rather than pure doubt is being the difference there. So I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah.
I did have another line though, which is also about the pensive. Similar to, or close to where yours was, about when Harry says he had never experienced that. When Dumbledore is saying, one simply siphons the excess thoughts. It becomes easier to spot patterns and links, you understand, when they are in this form. And I did used to be a teacher, but then I work now more in like research and data side of education. And so this line just like speaks to me about identifying patterns and trends. And I'm like, this sounds like an occasion for a spreadsheet. So I really hope that Dumbledore has a
Da, da, da,
spreadsheet,
da.
and he totally doesn't. But in my mind, he does.
He could probably do like the whole Voldemort thing where, you just use your wand and draw in the air, put something
Oh,
up.
yes, yes. Or the what I always wanted was the like the computer that Tony Stark has in the Marvel universe where he's just like moving stuff around
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
like
Get some
above the screen.
meta glasses or something like that.
That is the tech that I need.
That's right. Well, that's really all the favorite lines I had. You good to move on to Transfigurations?
Yep, that was all of mine.
Fantastic. Well, now, listeners, moving on to our Transfigurations, differences that the movies made from the books. In the book, when Dumbledore and Fudge leave, Dumbledore says, "Stay here, Harry. We're just going to go check out the grounds for a little bit. Won't take that long." But in the movie, he says, "Hang out here, Harry. I'm seeing Fudge off. Like he's leaving. We're done talking." So that's one change. Another one is that when Harry discovers the pensieve, in this one, he looks at Fox. He's like, "Should I go check it out? I'm gonna go check it out." But because he sees the Dumbledore even mentions that he left the thing open in order to see, and that tempted Harry. But in the movie, Harry goes to eat some licorice snacks that Dumbledore even suggested that he eat. And Harry's like, you can't trust Harry to be the kind of kid where if you leave out a box of candy on Halloween and say, just take one, that they would only take one. Because Harry just takes a fistful of candy in the movie. And they turn into these like biting little monsters, like leeches or something or like piranha leeches that attack him and bite him all over. And he bumps into the cabinet that is holding the pensieve, and it opens up, and that's how he discovers it in the movie. Also, the pensieve is a little bit different in this one, but not in the rest of the movies. They kind of fix it in book 6 or movie 6. But in this one, it seems more like a sink that is fixed to a stand. Whereas in the book, it's described as this like movable basin. Now they changed that in movie 6, but that is kind of how it appears in Goblet.
And correct me if I'm wrong. This is in the movie. This is not the first time that we see the pensieve. Like, don't we first see it way earlier when Harry is meeting with, or not Harry, Harry's not even there. Dumbledore is with some of the other professors, and he's putting like Harry's name coming out into the pensieve.
Good call out. Yeah. Yeah. That's the, one of the few times we don't get a Harry perspective moment. And so, in the movie, it's Dumbledore, Mad-Eye Moody, Snape, and McGonagall. I love that scene, though, because McGonagall's trying to argue for Harry not being in the tournament. And Snape says, perhaps we should let the events unfold. And Dumbledore goes very slowly, I agree with Severus. And McGonagall in the background is just furious. Potter's a boy, not a piece of meat. Another movie change is that there's only one trial. We don't get to see the 3 that take place in the book. There's just one trial. However, there's like a mashup of some of the information that is included in those other trials is put into this trial. But the one trial is Karkaroff's trial. He's not sitting in a chair. He's in like a bird cage, or is it called a gibbet? Maybe, I'm not sure, but this cage that has like spikes going into it. And I'm not going to lie, I love that scene so much because I love the ending when it's just, give me a name, give me the wretched name. Oh, I love it so much. But they, so it's just Igor's Karkaroff's trial, and it ends with him accusing Barty's son. Whereas in the book, it's Barty's on trial himself, or Barty's son is on trial himself. And when Barty's son gets accused, when he's found guilty, in the movie, he's like laughing hysterically and like trying to attack Igor.
Yeah.
And he's like, hello, father. And just a little tongue
flick.
Like
leaving no doubt that like he did it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, he's very much like, it wasn't me.
Yeah. It's a funny scene. Funny, crazy, weird, emotional. It's so many different things, but I love it. But yeah, those are all the different movie changes I have. So yeah, that wraps up the Transfiguration section for me. Moving on now to our golden snitches, behind the scenes, lore grabs, tids and bits, stuff like that. I did make note of just about every single Death Eater mentioned. However, I'm only going to read 2 of them here, listeners, because the rest are kind of spoilery for later. But, a safe one, Evan Rosier, because he's the one that gets killed, so we can kind of mention him. Evan Rosier was a pureblood wizard, possibly son of, and it says Rosier, so I guess you get that makes sense. He was a Slytherin student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry during the 70s. After graduating from Hogwarts, he became a Death Eater of Lord Voldemort and supported him during the First Wizarding War. And towards the end, he was captured and killed by Mad-Eye Moody. Evan may have been related to Druella Black, née Rosier, and thus to her daughters Bellatrix, Andromeda, and Narcissa, though this is unconfirmed. Given the fact that Evan was born in either the 50s or the 60s, Druella would be the right age to be his aunt, so it is likely that Evan is the cousin of these 3 sisters. Also, unlike the Muggle world where people with the same surname can be totally unrelated, wizards with the same name usually are, and that's pretty true.
Especially what we know, about what we learn about purebloods a little later in the series.
How much intermarrying and weirdness that goes on there. All right, the other one that I have mentioned is Mulciber. Mulciber was a Dark Witcher wizard and one of the earliest Death Eaters of Lord Voldemort. They were possibly an older relative of Mulciber II. Okay, that's interesting. They fought in the First Wizarding War and traveled to Hogsmeade in order to wish Tom Riddle good luck in trying to get a teacher position at Hogwarts. So that name does come up later. And that's most of what we know about them. For his etymology, it may refer to Hephaestus, meaning smelter. It is an early name for the gentle son of Zeus, and Hera, who had a clubfoot, was a craftsman and a blacksmith in Greek mythology. Mulciber is also a character in John Milton's Paradise Lost, a story based on mankind falling into sin and the struggle of heaven and hell. Mulciber was a fallen angel who is the architect of Pandemonium, the capital of hell and home to Demon's Council. During his trial, Igor Karkaroff accused Mulciber of being a Death Eater. It is not known whether he was referring to the older or younger Mulciber, so Mulciber the first or second. It is possible that Mulciber may have been one of the unidentified boys seen with Tom Riddle in a memory that we won't say everything about here. And it's unclear if he fought in the Second Wizarding War or if he, at this point, since he was an elderly man, may have already been dead. So that's all we got for Mulciber. Yay! Moving on to the very last golden snitch, and it's everybody's favorite. You had to see this coming. The pensieve. A pensieve was a very rare and powerful magical item. They were magical devices used to store and review memories. Pensieves were rare because only the most advanced wizards ever used them, and because the majority of wizard kind is afraid of doing so. When in use, a silver light shines from its contents. This light was bright, whitish silver, cloud-like, and moving ceaselessly, as somebody made note of in their favorite lines. Harry Potter thought the content of the basin looked like light made liquid or like wind made solid. Oh, that's so cool. So freaking cool. Etymology. Pensieve is, this is going to be terrible, Rachel. I'm going to try to say this right. Portmanteau. It's portmanteau, combining the words pensieve and sieve.
Portmanteau.
Oh, what does that mean? Like just a smash up or something, it sounds like?
Yeah, it's when you blend sounds and meanings of like 2 or more distinct words. So like brunch is a portmanteau for breakfast and lunch.
Gotcha. I had brunch today.
Oh.
Pensieve is a portmanteau combining the words pensieve and sieve. The latter is an object in which something may be sorted, drained, or separated, and pensive is derived from French and originally from the Latin pensare, meaning to ponder, and in common English usage means thoughtful or reflective. So yay! And that's really about it. I was kind of surprised. I thought there would be way more about the pensieve on the wiki because it's such a famous object, but it's really all you get, listeners. And so, with that wraps up our main coverage of the show. In just a second, we're going to be moving on to our restricted section for this book, also known as the Graveyard, where we talk all spoiler stuff. But before we wrap up this main part and we kick out all the listeners who don't want to hear the spoiler stuff, Rachel, where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram as the Menuscript. That's all one word. And again, it's just like manuscript, but with an E instead of an A. And you can find my podcast, The Menuscript, on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you choose to listen to podcasts. Would love to hear from you. If you want to come on and talk about a book with me, shoot me a message. Always looking for new book friends.
Yay, wherever pods are cast. I'm gonna steal that now. I love that. But yes, so thank you for joining us, Rachel. We're so glad to have you on. Now, listeners, if you don't want any spoilers, get on out of here. This isn't the section for you. But we love you. Thank you so much for listening. So here we are, restricted section. I was trying to remember the librarian's name. What's the
Madam Pence.
Madam Pence. All right. She hasn't caught us. We're back here. We have our
Sneaking
note.
around.
All right. We're here. So I have a few. So usually how this works, Rachel, is I'll kind of go through my list and sometimes it's just a little note of like, oh, this means this. And we work through it quickly, or we can linger on a subject, talk about it. And then once I finish my list, if there's anything else that you wanted to bring up as well, we can work on that. So the first one, we've already talked about in the restricted section that Rita is a animagus and that she can turn into a little beetle. And she has made reference to her beetle form earlier in the first chapter where she is on the windowsill in divination, spying on the kids in the classroom. So that's something to make note of if you had forgotten about that's what she can do. That little bug that Harry hears buzzing, that's Rita. That'll be important literally in the next chapter that will be covered next week. The other one I wanted to mention is that Harry describes Snape as looking like a bat.
Yes.
And this is like a famous Harry Potter theory. I want to get your take on it, but that Snape is an animagus who can transform into a bat. What do you think of that?
So I don't think that he is,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think, I mean, there is the moment in book 7 when he flees the castle and it says like he left a bat-shaped object. I'm honestly not sure Snape would be a bat, like if he was an animagus, just given the lore behind like what you have to do to become an animagus, because you don't pick. Like it's like I don't know that he would be a bat.
Yeah, I think
I'm not a bat expert, so maybe he would.
Bats are actually kind of cute. You know, they look like little puppies.
And they've got great hearing. They're very essential. So I guess like Snape's essential, but
yeah.
yeah,
I think I even heard that it was like confirmed from JK that he's not a bat, but at this point we make our own lore. Kind of. But it's also just fun to kick these things around.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he's a bat because I think, like you said, I don't think he would be a bat if he were to transfigure. But I also think it's just more to go to like a vampire illusions about him of like he's one way during the day and he has to his real motive hidden in the shadows, that type of thing for him. And it's also just cool imagery.
Yes.
Another one I had is that, as we mentioned, Dumbledore wouldn't ignore him like that. And then my note was LOL. So Harry says that at one point when he's in the pensive memory, be like waving his hand in front of his face, says Dumbledore wouldn't ignore him like that. But we know that's not true.
Right.
So in book 5, Dumbledore ignores him very blatantly all year. The movie even goes so far as to make a scene when Dumbledore is out in the courtyard and Harry's shouting at him, Headmaster, Headmaster, and Dumbledore is just walking away.
Yep.
So I feel bad for Harry in that moment. Although it's like, do I think it was the right decision on Dumbledore's part? No, but I do understand the motive a little bit of like, at this point he's made this connection. So it's like, you're wrong, but I understand. That's how I sort of felt about it.
No, I see that.
Let's see. The other one, Dumbledore hating the Dementors and saying that the Ministry shouldn't partner with them. Eventually, that's made clear. No, they shouldn't have, because, in book 6, Dementors it's such an easy crossover for, even in book 6, not just 7, but for the Dementors to start siding with Voldemort, being on his team, being like, oh, you're going to give us what we want. You're going to give us people and their souls. Yeah, we'll take that deal. You take that deal? That's a dang good deal. What's that movie? Inglourious Bastards. Have you seen that movie?
I have not.
Yeah, me neither. Stupid. Anyway, did you have anything else you wanted to mention? Oh, we wanted to talk about the pensieve and our theories on the pensieve. That's what I didn't forget that.
Oh, yes, you did want to talk about that.
So yes, it's always been interesting of like when you take the thoughts out of your head, are they gone? Or is it like you said, a kind of a copy and paste or like creating another document of it? At first, I was inclined to say, no, it doesn't remove the thoughts. But then I thought about in book 5, because it's not clear that that's what happens here in book 4. But in book 5, it definitely is the case because Snape is removing those memories so that Harry can't see what's going on in his head.
Right. Yes,
So
that's true.
So it's
Yeah, I've
definitely
forgotten
a
that.
fact that the memories leave your head. But I don't know. I feel like it's probably maybe it's like and Snape is so weird, like not weird, so cool describing how the mind works. Perhaps it's just you know that you have this memory,
I was
but
gonna
it's
say you
just not
must, because
there.
then otherwise, how would you know that you need to go back to the pensive for it?
Perhaps it's sort of like a label drawer. You've removed the contents to the drawer, but the label is still there. That would be my guess.
No, let's go with that, because that tracks.
Yeah, because when Dumbledore says, I find my brain so cluttered, I need to do this to be able to think properly. With his case, I view it more so that he wants to examine the memory properly. Not that he wants to empty his brain, but that he wants to be put in like memory world to examine properly. But with the Snape one adds a little more credence to that. Did you have any other thoughts on that?
No, but just it is fascinating how it works, because it's not like you literally get dropped into the memory in the third person. Like Harry doesn't become Dumbledore, even though it's Dumbledore's memory, and like he doesn't become Snape. Like he's literally the fly on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's really cool, and we see it, in when he does go into the pensive in book 5. Like he's able to hear a lot of what the Marauders are saying when he's like following them. So I don't know. It's a very the magic and the lore behind it is really cool. So it would be neat if she gave more information, but I don't know. I mean, the mind is a mystery, so I guess the pensive is a mystery too.
Yeah, I like that. Like you said, it's not a POV. It's not that you're in the person's eye seeing everything. So it has to be more than just your memory. It's the whole magic surrounding you, I guess, is brought into there as some greater element of magic than what we know is taking place. Anyway, that's all the restricted stuff I had to talk about. Did you have anything else, Rachel?
No, I don't think so. This was fun to go through some of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, very cool. So thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. Listeners, that's all we have to talk about this week. So glad you were here to listen. Looking forward to next week as we discuss chapters, whatever next chapters are. And yeah, Rachel, thank you for being on, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Retold. Artwork for this podcast was created by Rachel Ortlip. Music was created by Taylor Jarvis. And the Retold podcast is produced by me. That's right. I made this.